Here, we continue our coverage. We are joined now by Wisconsin Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
I have to start off just by getting your reaction to the news by President Trump that he's basically lowering those across-the-board tariffs to 10%. Did he make the right decision, Congressman?
Well, he should have never made the decision to mess up the economy in the first place, but I'm glad at least someone talked sense into him, and we've got a little reprieve. But, you know, Donald Trump's not good for the economy. He's not good for working people. He's good for cutting taxes for rich folks, but for the rest of us, it's just been a pretty rough ride.
You know, there's been a big back and forth over whether Congress can, in fact, play a role, try to halt or at least block President Trump's attempts to unilaterally impose tariffs. It seems like that effort has hit the pause button as well. Do you anticipate that there is enough support to get that passed?
Well, the Republicans just voted on a rule that made it harder for us to be able to have a vote, to force a vote by members of Congress to try to take back the ability to have control on the tariffs from Donald Trump. So unfortunately, literally, I just got off the floor, and that's what Republicans did. They gave him another set of keys rather than trying to stop him from these Trump tariffs that are taxing people in Wisconsin and across the country.
You know, the president argues, look, he imposed these tough tariffs, and now he says 75 countries have come to him to negotiate trade deals. We should note the White House has not released a list of what those countries are, in fact. But, Congressman, if President Trump, at the end of the day, is able to say, look, I got all of these new trade deals, will it have been worth it, and will he have had a point?
Well, a lot of people lost a lot of retirement savings. He created a lot of chaos for the market. I don't think at the end of the day you can say it was strategic. I always think of, the debate when he didn't have a health care plan. He had a concept of a plan. I feel like that's all he ever has is concepts of plans, and we pay the price. And right now, working class folks are the ones who are hurting. And, maybe he could have got this through what he's doing, but you could have also got this just trying to reach out to other countries and have different tariffs. The way he did it was chaos and harmful to the economy.
Well, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, your neighboring state, was here in Washington today giving a speech in large part about tariffs. I want to play some of that and get your reaction on the other side.
I understand the motivation behind the tariffs. And I can tell you, here's where President Trump and I do agree. We do need to make more stuff in America. More cars and chips, more steel and ships. We do need fair trade. I'm not against tariffs outright, but it is a blunt tool. You can't just pull out the tariff hammer to swing at every problem without a clear, defined end goal.
What is your reaction to the governor? And does she have the right message? You can hear her walking a very fine line on this, not dismissing these tariffs outright.
Well, she's exactly right. I mean, there's useful ways if you have a plan, a strategic plan to have targeted tariffs. You're dumping cheap steel in the country. We want to protect an industry. We put tariffs on to protect those workers in that industry. But when you just do a tariff on everything like Donald Trump is doing, then it becomes a tax. It becomes a tax on every single constituent I have, people across the country. It makes it harder for the economy. It makes the stock market do what we just saw it did. But you can have a strategic plan to use tariffs wisely. We just didn't see a single bit of that from Donald Trump.
Governor Whitmer obviously represents a state that went for President Trump. Should that be the playbook for Democrats to walk a fine line? Because she did have some very specific criticisms of the tariffs and the way they're being implemented. And yet she did refrain from taking aim at Trump directly. And then there she was at the White House meeting with President Trump. Is that the key, or at least part of it, to Democrats getting back on track politically speaking?
I think just being plain spoken, I'm kind of an every guy in Congress. I came from a lower middle class family. I'm not one of the millionaires up here. But I also know that, what Donald Trump did put a tax on me and people like me across the country. And you do have to call him out. One thing that I know Donald Trump cares about is Donald Trump. And I guess I now add Elon Musk to that list. They're going to get a tax cut at the end of the day, $4.5 trillion. But I don't want them to cut health care and long-term care and education spending and all these other things while he's playing with tariffs and wrecking the economy. for people like me, because a lot of us live paycheck to paycheck, and Donald Trump doesn't. And the only people he's watching out for is that cabinet of billionaires and Elon Musk and himself and everyone who belongs to Mar-a-Lago.
And of course, one of the big headlines today is that President Trump ramped up tariffs on China after China retaliated against the United States. Do you see this as a trade war, and how concerned are you about it?
It's looking like the trade war. And, again, if you had a plan, there's a very strategic way to use tariffs against China and do it effectively. What Donald Trump is doing, again, is not that. He's just throwing them out there. They add some, he adds some. And at the end of the day, it's going to create chaos. But that's what Donald Trump likes. The more stability we have, the more planning we have, you can make tariffs work. But Donald Trump, again, is not doing that. I think he caved today. I think that's the only way you can really describe it, by this 90-day delay. I think he wants to get that tax bill done so badly. He had people in Congress, including Republicans, upset. He had his black tie fancy fundraiser last night, and I think that was part of what brought him to the point where he was today on tariffs.
Well, you take me to my next question. Let's play some of what he said at that fundraiser for the NRCC last night. I'll get your reaction on that.
I'm proud to be the president for the workers, not the outsourcers. The president who stands up for Main Street, not Wall Street, who protects the middle class, not the political class, and who defends America, not trade cheaters all over the globe. They're trade cheaters.
The message not too dissimilar from some of what we would hear from some of your progressive colleagues. What do you make of it?
Yeah, but his plan is the opposite of what progressive colleagues actually would do when it comes to this. I mean, we should have good trade policies, and we can have better trade policies, and I would love to see him do that. But what he's doing with tariffs is across the board. It's not targeted. It's not going to actually accomplish those goals. So he talks a good game, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan and a strategy, which he hasn't had, it turns out to hurt the stock market. It hurts the economy. It's, making it tougher and raising costs for the average person. And, the biggest thing he won on in November was the economy. People across the globe were paying more, through inflation coming out of COVID. And he simply has taken a real advantage in November and made it his strongest detriment right now, because he's not dealing with the economy effectively.
All right, Congressman Pocan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.